Okay, let's go ahead and get started on this, everybody. So, welcome back to another 2 p.m. PST Twitch stream. I'm your host, Strange Bear Jim, and today we're going to be continuing on in our Pega journey. We got some videos to upload and make public, and then, of course, I got Warframe later on tonight. But for those of you that are here, for the Pega videos. Obviously, you don't necessarily care too much about the other portions of the stream. That's perfectly fine. Understandable on that one. So let's go ahead and get into um, some preliminaries for what I do when it comes to Pega. So first off, um, some statements that I always make at the very beginning of these videos or these Pega streams is I am not endorsed by Pega whatsoever. Okay, they're I never really asked for permission from them, and they never like gave me their blessing or anything along those lines. I never even asked for it. So there's no like major cooperation from either of us right at this moment in time. Okay, uh, so so don't feel like I'm I'm getting some kind of like major benefit from them. Um, I'm just kind of doing this for my, uh, essentially for my own benefit, in that I am working towards getting my certification in the system architect. Okay, and from there, hopefully I can get a job that you know, uh, well, I mean, I'm trying to find any kind of job that in software development that's willing to actually take me and keep me. um, but certifications, uh, it can help because I mean that's you're essentially trying to prove that you are learning further. Um, I just have a hard time trying to focus down on some of these things. Hence the reason why I do these on stream. It allows me to kind of focus. Um, I am not an authorized training partner. And this should not be considered an instructor-led training. So if you're coming into these videos expecting me to be, some kind of Pega instructor or something along those lines, then yeah, no. Please take that out of your mind because I am a software developer trying to learn Pega himself. So I'll be having, questions much like anybody else would have questions when it comes to learning anything new. Okay. Now, if um, if you want to have instructor-led training, then I would say go for it. It does cost. It feels to me quite a lot to get instructor-led training, but if it leads to you getting a job that can pay a decent amount of money, then it would probably be worth it for you to consider doing that. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Okay. Um, so there's that. Okay. Um, so when it comes to the certifications, like I said, I'm working towards my system architect certification. There's also the business architect, and that is very similar to the system architect in that they both have the same missions at the very start. Okay. Business architect and system architect have the same two missions that you have to kind of go through. So if you're watching this and you want to go into business architect, then great. You're on the right track. Okay. I have multiple other videos on my playlist that kind of goes through these two missions so far. Okay. Now, when I'm done with these two missions, apparently I have close to 10 hours remaining, but that also includes the 2 hours, two modules there. Um, Once I get done with these two missions, I'll go to the business architect, complete these two modules that are not in the system architect. Just bear that in mind. So if anybody wants to try to get their business architect certification, then hopefully my videos help. But it all depends on how what how you study. Okay, so hopefully I'm adding some benefit to you in watching these videos. Um, Now, uh, after those two modules are done, then we'll switch back over to the system architect again and finish off the rest of the 26 modules that are left for the system architect. So, um, yesterday we took care of um, module and quiz. So if I'm not mistaken, we are on a challenge now. Let's see. Confirming. Oh, no, we were able to complete the challenge as well. Okay, so we are on to validating data against business logic and the module and the challenge. Now, if I can get through both of them, then we'll go ahead and do so. But it all depends on how much content is there. So we just have the data validation topic, and then the module quiz, and then of course the challenge afterwards. So, okay. Looks like quite a bit of information here, so be prepared for that. Okay, so data validation. Methods of data validation. When you design a view, you add all the fields and controls that are specification and that the specification requires. You must also consider how to ensure that the data values generated by users are valid. Valid data is required so that the system can process the information without error. Some data requirements are outlined in the following table. The data must be um, the right type. For example, users must enter a number in a total purchase units field. The data must be restricted to possible values. For example, users can only choose a valid loan type by selecting the type from the list of options. The data must fit business logic. For example, a date of birth field must be in the past. Well, you also have to be careful of how far in the past as well. But yeah, because I mean, if they were born, you know, in the 1800s, then you'll be like, how are you still alive? So, you know, within reason, you know, check for check for a little bit of inconsistencies there, you know, or have some form of check in there that basically says, hey, warn the CSR that there's something wrong with this particular date of birth, for example. So to prevent processing errors, Pega platform provides field types and controls to support validation requirements. Choosing the right control may be sufficient to satisfy a validation requirement. In cases where a control or field type is insufficient to perform data validation, Pega platform provides data validation by using business logic to test fields with conditions. For example, you can use a calendar control to ensure that the data entered by users is a date, regardless of whether the format is day, month, year, or month, day, year. Depending on where you live, obviously, they change up, you know, Uh, do you typically see the day first, or do you typically see the month first? Depends on where you live. Where I currently live, it's typically regarded as month, day, year. But um, but there are other locations in the world that uses day first. So I mean, it all depends, right? Um, but you can't use a calendar control to ensure that a start date field in an employment history form captures a date in the past. Instead, you can validate the date is in the past using business logic. Okay, so business logic data validation. To use App Studio to perform simple business logic validations that compare the value of a field against a constant value when users submit a form. You create conditions that define invalid data values so that an error message is displayed when the condition is met. If users generate a value that meets the condition for an invalid value, the system displays an error message and prevents the user from continuing the case until the issue is resolved. In the following image, click the plus icons to learn more about how to configure a validation condition to ensure users enter a value greater than 100 for enter a digit greater than 100 field. So you have an action, you have the message, you have the condition, um, so that if they have the phrase in there, enter a digit greater than 100, and they um, you know enter in 100, um, then obviously it doesn't match with the condition. So, but you know, error message guideline. Your error message should provide users with the information needed to identify and resolve the data validation error. This is, you know, um, I can't stress how much this is needed. You know, um, I mean, I know you're a programmer, so you might not necessarily care about, um, um, you just kind of want to, put a basic message in and move on with the rest of your code. I get it. I understand. But believe me, when you're like 5 years down the line or something like that, and you're trying to come on back, or maybe you're using the application for the first time and you see an error message that does not say anything to you, okay, about how, what kind of error you're receiving or why, you're gonna be wondering where, you know, what's going on, how would I resolve this issue, okay? Um, if you have something in there that says error received, please fix, or something like that. How are you going to know how to fix it? That kind of thing. So I can't stress enough how, much, just having a little bit of extra information in your error message can make a world of difference. Okay, even if it's like a simple, like, hey, you've hit error code 101 or something along those lines, or 1001 or whatever. Okay, and you have like a listing of all the errors or something like that that kind of like specifies like, hey, this error code, gives you, is the reason, you did this wrong, so, there you go. Um, it might not necessarily be something that is necessary for like the general public, but it might be necessary for you as a programmer to see, um, um, what's going on, and what might be getting triggered. Like for example, um, you send an application out to the world, right? And everybody's using it and stuff like that. But suddenly you start getting a lot of logs saying, hey, this user received this particular error number. This user received the same exact error number, error number, error number, error number, error number from different users. And now you're going to be like, okay, they hit that, where is it? And, what's triggering it? So you can kind of go to that particular section and go, okay, so they're triggering that at this particular moment in the application. You can go in and try to figure out maybe there's another way of like changing the application to allow for whatever someone's trying to use. Like maybe they're trying to do password, but you never included like um, symbols, for example. But a lot of people might want to use symbols. Okay. Obviously, you need to kind of be careful with that because that might open up potential for hacking. But um, if you do it, if you do it correctly and if you do it, wisely, um, then receiving that error, could potentially go away if you handle it properly. So don't be afraid of putting in a descriptive error message. So okay, validation condition configuration. To configure the validation, you create a condition that states either enter digit greater than 100 field is less than or equal to 100. So yeah, okay. It's basically standard. And then, of course, you have the error itself. Validation at runtime. When users submit the form, the system evaluates the condition based on the value in the field. If the condition evaluates to true, meaning the value in the field is less than or equal to 100, then the message is displayed on the form. Now, um, when you get to this point, make sure that you test it like thoroughly, you know, because um, you might be seeing um, they might enter in something that you might not necessarily expect. So you might say like, hey, this is for digits numbers only, right? But maybe they put in some alpha characters that you don't really consider. So it might not have it might not necessarily trigger your condition at all, and therefore it might just kind of try to pass through and therefore screw up the rest of your program. Um, like they might put an A in there, and suddenly you might try to do a calculation with A later on. And while sure, you can always try to put in, some algebra or calculus into your fields and see what you can do with that. It probably wouldn't be very helpful for those that are, just looking for like, hey, what is your age? Right? If you put in like, my age is A, everybody like, uh, huh? That kind of thing. So, business logic validations are often associated with processes in the case lifecycle, enabling you to validate each field instance based on distinct business logic validations. The business logic validations that define acceptable values are separate from the fields that capture data. For example, a date of birth field is validated when users enter the date on the field. The validation is not applied again when the field is used later during case processing. Multiple forms may use the same field and apply different validation conditions for each instance of the field. For example, in the HR app, HR representatives enter information in two forms, the job history form and the new hire form. In the job history form, the HR representative enters the start date of an employee who already works at the company. The HR representative must enter a date before the current date. In the new hire form, the HR representative enters the start date for an employee who has not started work. The HR representative must enter a start date after the current date. Using two business logic validations, one for each business condition, you can ensure that the correct dates are entered on each form. In the App Studio, you can validate field of a value. You can validate the value of a field when you submit a form or when the case enters a stage. Check your knowledge with the following interaction. So, um, a little bit of a quiz before we move on. Data validation using business logic enables you to validate a single field against multiple constant values when different values are required across the application. Wait, hold on. Data validation uses business logic. Data validation using business logic enables you to validate a single field against multiple constant values when different values are required across the application. This sentence is really kind of confusing for me, sorry. Maybe a little bit of pronunciation, commas or the like might be better here. I mean, I guess that sentence is very odd, or I'm having a hard time trying to um, pick apart everything. You know, maybe a couple of commas in there might be helpful. Data validation, comma, using business logic, comma, enables you to validate a single field, comma, against multiple constant values, comma, when different values are required across the application. That's probably what I would probably do. But then again, you know, I'm not an English major, so I'm maybe I'm just having a hard time with it, but it feels like a run-on sentence. Um, okay. Validation on a form. You know what? Here, let me suggest an edit on that. The true false quiz about was a little difficult to wrap my mind around. Maybe it was due to lack of commas. Um, um, Maybe a rewrite of the sentence would be better. Sure. Um, but Maybe mine just was not not working correctly to get the necessary information in the sentence itself. Still got the question right. Doesn't mean that I didn't kind of struggle with it. Able to answer it easily. There we go. All right. Which makes me wonder. Data validation. Actually, hold on. Let me. Multiple const. Yeah, there's. It's like, hey guys, if you want to use a statement that has like very, very like pinpoint, you know, definitions, then maybe have that up above in some form. You know, none of, the entire statement here doesn't have any, was never addressed, you know, um, was never really addressed, above at all. Mm. Oh, hey there, Jamal. How you doing there, bud? Welcome to the stream. How's your day been so far? Or Jamil? Probably Jamil. I don't know. I have a hard time pronouncing things, so apologies on that. Okay. You use business logic validations on a form when you cannot predict or control the value that users enter. You configure business logic validations on a form, and the validation is triggered when users submit the form. If users submit a form that contains a value that meets the condition for invalid data, the form displays an error, and the system prevents the users from continuing the case until users submit data that fails the condition. Use validation on a form when users can perform an immediate action to resolve the invalid data, such as entering a new value in a field. For example, assume a form contains a date of birth field. The field type and control cannot prevent users from entering or submitting a date that is in the future. However, you can design a business logic validation to display an error if users submit a date that is in the future. The form can be submitted once users enter a date in the past. At the center of the following image, slide the vertical line to view the step configuration to validate the date of birth field on the left and error message that is displayed in the form on the right. So here on the left, you have the, you know, condition that they are setting up here. So, um, they're saying, hey, show the error if and only if, date of birth should not be in the future. So date of birth is after today. Now, um, now here's something else that you might want to consider as well. Like, maybe, um, maybe you're trying to get the age for the user of said application, right? Like maybe you're trying to say like, hey, you have to be 13 to use this site, right? Well, what happens if they put today down, as their date of birth? Well, that's not age 13, right? So you might want to consider trying to work on that as well, you know, because, um, you know, if, sure, your date of birth might be today, but you're not hitting that age 13 mark that we need, that kind of thing, right? So, now over here, we're showing the invalid message there. So date of birth should not be in the future. Enter customer information, date of birth 4/16/2030. So obviously they're probably going to need to kind of update this multiple times in the future. um, they should probably go ahead and set this up for, you know, some like extreme number, like 3,000 or something like that. But the calendar might have a little hard time trying to do that too. It depends on the calendar control, of course. So, um, but at the same time, I mean, you should still allow for the user to enter in. Um, actually, um, if they enter in the, you should probably have some controls in there to show or to handle like user input for, is it, month, day, year, or is it, day, month, year? Try to allow for user input, type in the keyboard to handle that, but also be aware of like the changes um, in region as well. So, validation on a stage. You can also use business logic validation on a stage. Use business logic validation on a stage to ensure the application has generated the correct data and that users have entered the correct data or performed their appropriate actions before the case enters a specific stage. You can configure business logic validations on a stage in the case type data model, and the validation is triggered before the case enters the specific stage. On the stage entry validation, if a data value meets the conditions for invalid data, the case cannot enter the stage, and an error message is displayed. Day, month, and year. That depends on where you live. You know, don't um, don't focus on that as the only possibility that's out there. So, when an error message is triggered on the stage validation, end users need to have an ability to update invalid data or perform an action, such as returning to a previous stage or closing the case. It is up to the developer to configure the functionality that allows end users to resolve the validation error. For example, in a mortgage application, a valid credit score must be available before the case can enter the underwriting stage. The application informs the user that the credit score is invalid, and the user is allowed to verify the credit history on file or cancel the process. Click the following image, click the plus icons to learn more, read more about the configuration validations in the case type data model. Alright, so first off, reusable fields. Like validations on the step, you can configure stage entry validations for reusable fields, such as case ID and case status. Validations grid. The stage entry validations are displayed as a grid where each row is identified by a property and each column is identified by stage. The grid allows you to manage all stage and entry validations for a specific case type. Validation conditions. You build conditions for stage validations in much the same way you build conditions for step validations. You can add multiple expressions using and, or groupings to configure a condition. For example, in the mortgage application, if the credit score is less than 300 or greater than 850, the user receives an error message. Validating on multiple stages. When creating a business logic validation in the data model, you can configure a stage entry validation to apply to multiple stages. So if they, you know, if you're writing the credit score multiple times, which I wouldn't really understand why you would want the user to do that multiple times. You would think that you would take the value from like the one and only location that they enter it and apply it to all the rest of the fields, then that would work. Unless, of course, you're trying to find out like when, like you're trying to find like their credit score over like over their lifetime, which is a little ridiculous in my mind because how would anybody know, you know, what their credit score was like 2 years ago versus what they have now? It doesn't really make that much sense to me. So, um, so be careful. You know, um, obviously this is great. Now you can put these stage entry, validations up, and you can check, multiple stages for these particular values. That's all well and good, but um, make sure that you absolutely need them too, because um, you know, you could, if you know, obviously one of the most common problems in any kind of uh, application that is made is typically human error. Okay, typically. Um, so say a person is trying to type in their credit score, but they keep on messing up the number each and every single time. Okay, like they're saying, oh hey, it's 250, no, it's 251 or 252 or something along those lines, and they're trying to put that down, even though that is, it's meant to be like their current credit score. That's going to be a problem because now you have conflicting credit scores when it should be the same one for like all the fields, right? So sometimes it might be just easier to, have the person enter it in once and then, apply that field to, any time that you might need it, later on. So, um, or even, or better yet, get the credits, have them enter in their personal information and then use that personal information to collect the data from, valid sources. Like, hey, you just provided your information, social security number and so on and so forth. That's obviously, you want to make sure that you guard that as much as possible, and not save it. Hence the reason, you don't necessarily want to break any laws. So be careful with that. But um, you get that information, and then take it to a website to get valid information back. Like, they're like maybe double checking their driver's license, checking with the state and making sure that their driver's license is indeed valid. Checking a the credit score, making sure that that's valid. There's like multiple ways um, of confirming the information, and even getting information. Like, maybe you don't even want them to enter in their credit score. Go to a website, put in their information, collect the credit score from that, and there you go. Um, that kind of thing. So, so try your best to limit how much the customer um, puts in information, because hey, customers can make mistakes. So check your knowledge with the following interaction. Which three statements about data validation is correct? The control, such as drop-down list, validates that data is restricted to a set of values. Okay, I mean, that's true, or potentially true. A validate condition, such as currency equals US dollars, validates that data meets business requirements by using business logic. Hmm. I mean, currency equals US dollars? I mean, that doesn't. Huh? You want to have that kind of set up in your application itself. So, I don't know if this is the right one, if that's correct. The field type, such as date and time, validates that data is of the correct type. Oh boy. Um, oh, okay. They're really going in on very specific language on this particular interaction. Oof. Okay. And I have to choose three of them. Okay, so I can see that there's um some of them with um um okay, so if you look, you can see that the first here and the fifth here are pretty much the exact same thing, you know. Such as a drop-down list validates that data is restricted to a set of values. It's the exact same thing. Now, the question that you have to answer is it the control or is it the field type? This one, the field type and the business logic, such as date and time, validates that data is of the correct type. So both of those are the same, or similar. So so that has to be the correct choice. That has to be the correct choice because you can't have the business type and the business logic being the exact same thing, or at least God, I hope not. So, um, Business logic does not work for, validated data is the correct type. I think that would be more field type. Um, and I feel the control is the proper drop-down list versus the field type. So this is what I'm going to go with. Right. When designing a view, select appropriate controls to ensure that the data is restricted to possible values. In this situation, it's appropriate to use business logic validation rather than alternative data validation method. When designing a view, select appropriate field types to ensure that data entered is of the correct type. So, bear in mind, okay, um, I looked at this a little bit, I looked at it slowly. I looked at, I analyzed all the possible answers here, okay, and I saw the fact that, there was some repetitions in here. However, when you're in the certification, they might not necessarily give you these repetitions, okay? You know, this in the fourth and the fifth here might be off by a word or two, okay? And that kind of changes up, you know, um what the sentence might be trying to go for. However, you need to remember, the field type, the validate condition, and the control, and make sure that the definition is indeed correct on there. Because, um, let's do it this way. Um, what happens when they say the control, such as date and time, validates the data is of the correct type? Now, how will you know the control, you know, which of these controls is valid? Okay, so you're going to need to make sure that you really analyze the question, understand, what they're kind of going for here. Now, um, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of struggled with this a little bit because there was a lot of information kind of packed in here. Not to say that I didn't understand what they were trying to go for, but um, I mean, just from the this alone here, okay, the fact that they didn't even have, um, this statement being, duplicated anywhere above, you know, um, well, I mean, it is duplicated, but, they rephrased it in a way, that wasn't the same as above. Um, be, be aware that, you know, statements like this, you know, questions like this is most likely going to be on the certification. Okay, so if they throw these kind of curveballs at you, okay, be prepared to be able to analyze them and answer them, you know, like they mentioned. Okay, um, try to help yourself out on, on understanding the definitions and the like. Now, one thing that I'm kind of curious about, you have control here. Field types and controls to support validation requirements. Choosing the right control may be sufficient in satisfying the validation requirement in cases where a control or field type um, hmm. So, hmm. controls such as drop-down list validates that data is restricted to a set of values, right? But here's the thing. They didn't really go into I don't really feel like they went directly into what these are really all about. Hmm. Field type such as data time validates that data is of the correct type. But they don't outright state that above. Wait, hold on. Validates that data meets business requirements by using business logic. Okay, so here's the thing. They're saying, data requirements and examples here, right? But they're not aligning this table up with field types, controls, or the validate condition. And I think that's where their failure is on this one. So, so I'm going to suggest an edit here. And the last question you ask for clarification on the 3 keywords. Field type, for example. However, in the topic, it was never clearly defined. It might have been alluded to, but nothing really concrete. Would suggest maybe adding the 3 keywords to the table above so that they have a direct connection with the definitions given in the quiz itself. Okay, so this particular topic took quite a bit of time. Um, and we haven't gotten. Well, I mean, let me finish off the module quiz. I wanna at least complete um, complete the module quiz at the very least. So, given the following validation criteria, which two data sets trigger an error message? Choose two. Urgency is greater than 50, or case status contains open. Um, I mean, that would trigger because case status is equal to open. That one doesn't trigger because it's not greater than 50 and it's not open, so that one's clear. This one does trigger, and I only needed to choose two, right? So, both of those should work. Case status is not open, and it has to be greater than 50, not greater than or equal to. So, even the urgency doesn't really work here. Now, Um, what's kind of unfortunate here is the fact that they didn't have an urgency that was over, like they didn't have like resolved and urgency is 51 or something along those lines. So that's kind of unfortunate. They should have really had an example that did that. So so both of those should be correct. Yep. So yeah, the fact that case status contains open for both of these is um, unfortunate. So, in a mortgage loan case type, applicants must enter data in the credit score, income, assets, liabilities, and loan amount fields. The data is submitted on the different processes and case type. The system informs applicants that based on the data they provided in the financial information stage, there are no loans available, and the case does not enter the loan stage. How would you configure the case type to form the data validation described in this scenario? Um, uh, okay, so set each field to the appropriate field type to test for valid data. I mean, that doesn't really matter all that much. Um, they can have the exact appropriate field type. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be approved for a loan, or they can see an appropriate loan for them. Like their income might be zero, for example. So, would you want to give in a loan to someone with zero income? Probably not. So, this first one doesn't really work for that. Configure business logic validation in the loan stage. Well, I mean, we don't necessarily want them to get to the loan stage. So it has to be before the loan stage. So this one doesn't really work for that. Configure business logic validation on each form. I mean, sure, you could try to do that. Um, but again, you know, it doesn't really matter for the loan stage. You don't need that. That's not needed at all for that. Um, so this doesn't really. I mean, it can. You can still try to make it work if you really wanted to, but it's not really needed for the loan stage. So um, set the control for each field to allow only valid data. Again, same as um, same as the first one there. It's like, sure, you can allow for valid data, but I mean, that still doesn't necessarily mean that they should be approved for the loan stage. So the fifth one should be the answer, and apparently not. Okay. Configuring stage entry data validation of configuring stage entry data validation on a financial information stage prevents the case from receiving the data needed in the validation criteria. They didn't necessarily state the entry. Okay, so most likely they want it to be probably this one. But unfortunately I can't choose the feedback. I mean, unless they want it to be that one. I mean, if they're trying to say like, hey, it has, the business logic can only be on the entry of the loan stage, then um, I guess. But I mean, can you have business logic validation like anywhere in the stage? Doesn't have to be like in the entry of the stage. It could be like after everything is completed in the stage, right? Hmm. Let me pick this one and see if I get the 100%. Okay, so given the following validation criteria triggers an error message, which data triggers the error message? Okay, so apparently we were only picking one out of the two, so um, update operator is equal to operations manager, not director, so that's perfectly fine. And because it's an and, it has to be the operations director. So this one is not an error message. Okay, so this one is, or so far we have operations director, so that matches with the um, first condition, but the case status is not equal to open. Okay, so because the case status is resolved, it's not equal to open, which is true, and it is equal to operations director. So this one is the true error message right there. Not the operations director, so we can already cancel that one out. It's false on that first condition, so we don't even need to even test the second. So we move on. This one is the operations director, um, so it passes that first check, but we see here that the case status is open. So that makes this statement false. So that would make the entire and statement false. So this one isn't correct. So that's the correct one. Okay. So they're basically stating that that second question that I had, um, was the um, you know, okay, hold on, let me. Let me get to it again. So they're stating that this one is indeed the correct one for the loan stage. Okay, but um, so they're basically stating that the business logic validation for stage is always at the very entry of the stage. Okay. Let me go back because I wanna check out their topic on this real quick. So yes, I want to leave. Um, value field against a constant value and okay. Validate each field instance based on distinct the business logic validations that find acceptable value. Those used later during the case processing. Um, You can validate the value of a field when you submit a form or when the case enters the stage. You don't have to do, it doesn't have to be only when a case enters the stage. So there's a problem with that already. Um, so so use business logic validation on stage. Use business logic validation on stage to ensure the application has generated the correct data and the users have entered the correct data or performed the appropriate actions before the case enters a specific stage. You configure business logic validations on a stage in the case type data model. Validation is triggered before the case enters the specified stage. On a stage entry validation, if a data value meets the condition for invalid data, the case cannot enter the stage, and an error message is displayed. Okay, um, so there's two ways of handling, so when they stated, business logic validation for, the loan stage, they were talking about how it's meant for the entry of the stage and not um, like during the stage. Um, so so with that in mind, okay. Um, you know, this one is indeed the correct answer, just barely. Okay, just by a little. Okay. Now, if they had stated here, for example, that configure the business logic validation um, on the form within the financial information stage or something along those lines, then that would be true. That should be true. Okay. But they didn't state that. They said each form. So, that that doesn't work. That doesn't apply. So, um, and this one's kind of misleading a little bit because, I mean, you can still do business logic validation within the financial information, stage, and the form in the stage, but, you know, um, yeah, I don't know. So be careful. um, be careful on how really look at your answers there because obviously, um, or just try to remember business logic validation for a stage happens at the entry of said stage. Okay, so remember that for the certification exam because believe me, they will hit you with that. Okay, they will throw that curveball at you on the certification. Okay, so their wording will be quite um, confusing when it comes to the certification. So read through it carefully to make sure that you are indeed, you know, answering the questions, appropriately, completely. So I already done the quiz, so it doesn't really matter all that much. So tomorrow we're going to be continuing the, um, going on to the challenge. So be prepared for that. Obviously, I'm not going to do that right now. So, um, and then we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16 more modules and challenges to kind of get through. Um, so still quite a bit of content left on this particular mission. But that's where we're going to go ahead and end it. Um, so thank you for joining me on this portion of the Pega journey. Looking through the modules, looking through the challenges. Hopefully, I helped in some small fashion or not. Um, continue working through it all there, folks, because believe me, the certification for the system architect is not an easy one. Okay, I've taken it before. There's a lot of content that they will throw at you. A lot of the questions are going to be quite nuanced. So, um, if you're off by one word, then you're going to get that question wrong, and that one question might make or break your chance of success on the certification exam. Okay. Um, I heard of many of my particular batchmates that, did the certifications, they barely passed. Okay. Um, and some of them are quite intelligent. So the fact that um, even they were having, they were struggling um, with the questionnaire, with the certification exam, means you're going to need to know like every single last little tiny detail, it feels like. Okay. Make sure that you know those definitions, that you understand what they're trying to go for on that. Because once that certification hits and you're there, with the proctor trying to, is it proctor? I don't know. You're sitting down at your desk, or maybe you're at a certification, building trying to take the test there. Um, you know, Either way, you're under a time limit. You have, I think it was like 60 questions or so to get through in like an hour, maybe two. And if, you go to each and every single question and, they might be hitting you with those definitions like, hey, um, what is the control? Okay. And you're going to have to be able to answer that. So, so, be try to prepare yourself as much as you can. Okay. Don't be afraid to go to like other websites to look at other questions or whatnot. Um, and prepare yourself because it is not an easy test. So, okay. That's where we're going to go ahead and end it. So, hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow as we continue our Pega journey. And thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording right now.